Welcome, welcome, welcome. We probably should check to make sure you're in the right place. This is for my mom's memorial service, Isadora Grass. So thank you all for coming. It's great to have you here. I thought I was trying to think of a way to start the service, and then reading through some of my mom's stuff, I found this something she wrote when she was in ninth grade about her history up to that place. And so I thought I would share that with you. So this is from Mom's own words, and you can hear a ninth grader talking about their life so far. I was born on January 8th, 1926, 5 o'clock in the morning, in the town of Middle Branch in the state of Nebraska. Now, she says the town of Middle Branch there, but it was, for some reason, the birth certificate says Venus, Nebraska. The doctor's name was Gordon Fletcher. My oldest sister, Edna, was working at this time, so she came home. She came home so she could take care of me. When I was, by the way, Gordon Fletcher, the doctor, Gordon Van Cleek was named after that doctor. When I was a year old, we moved to Walnut, Nebraska. We lived at Walnut for 2 years. When I was 2, my brother Gordon was born. Oh, here she says it, which they named after the Dr. Gordon Fletcher. When I was 3 years old, we moved to Grimpton, Nebraska. I started school here when I was 5. My sisters and I went to school together at Grimpton. We walked 2 miles. In the spring of 1932, when I was 6, we decided to move to South Dakota. The day we were going to move, I came down with scarlet fever. But my father and 5 of my sisters went on, and my father said he would come after us when we wrote and told him we were ready to come. They didn't have cell phones back then. We stayed at my sister Edna's place since she was married at this time and was not going to move to South Dakota yet. I will always remember this time because I was very sick. I couldn't eat anything but Jell-O, and that I couldn't eat very well. I was in bed for 2 weeks. After I was ready to go, we went to South Dakota. We lived in a sod house with 3 rooms on a farm. The fall of 1932, I started school. One day we took my cousin's horses and buggy to school, and that night after school, when we were on our way home, they got to acting up, and one of the horses kicked Loretta and knocked her out. We finally got her home. In the spring, we usually walked to school and home. It was 4 miles a day to walk. When I was 7, we moved about 3 miles from this place. It was a real big house. It had 10 rooms, but my sister Edna, her husband Henry, so Edna's husband, Henry, was also my dad's uncle. So Uncle Henry was my Uncle Henry as well as my great Uncle Henry. And I guess Mom and Dad were some kind of cousins or something, but 3 times removed, or who knows, I don't know. So Edna and her husband Henry and their children had moved into part of the house. Now we had to walk 4 miles to school. It was fun to walk in the spring, but in the winter there were too many blizzards. But when it just snowed, it was so pretty. I enjoyed going out in it. When I was 8, we moved to town because my brother Gordon was now old enough to go to school, and my father didn't want him to walk so far. Also, this was the same year my niece was going to start school, so she stayed with us. We rented a one-room house to live in. That summer, we went back to the farm to live. That fall, my nephew started school, so when we went back to live in town, he went with us. Finally, we bought a house and moved in. It was a 3-room house, a very nice house with big rooms and a nice yard. Across the street lived some Indians. The girl and I became very good friends. We always went to school together, and when one of us went uptown, we both went. Her name was Joyce. When I was 11, we decided to move to Washington. I didn't want to go, but in a way I did, for I thought they would have cowboys and horses. But I sure got fooled. And then I wanted to go back home. On the way to Chehalis, Mom got sick, and we had to stay in Ellensburg for 2 weeks until she was able to travel. I went to school in Boyce Ford, Washington, a town 20 miles southwest of Chehalis. I added that because I didn't know where that was. After a year, we moved to Adna, and I went to school in town. After a year there, we moved to Chehalis, and I finished 6th grade at Westside Elementary. I went on to junior high. I am now in the 9th grade. Mr. Richard is my homeroom teacher. My girlfriend is Edna R. The subjects I take are civics, algebra, art, English, health, and home economics. Okay, so this is what I added. 4 years later, she would marry Lawrence Edward Grass on October 20th, 1945. 9 months later, I would be born, and 2 years later, my brother Wayne, and then 7 years later, my sister Sharon. One of Mom's all-time favorite hymns was the Old Rugged Cross. So David and Betty will share that song with us at this time.
Suffering and shame, and I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Oh, that old rugged cross, so despised by the world, has a wondrous attraction for me. For the dear Lamb of God left his glory above to bear it to dark Calvary. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. In the old rugged cross, stained with blood so divine, see. For 'twas on that old cross Jesus suffered and died to pardon and to sanctify me. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
There's a little known fact about my mom. My mom was an addict. Very few people knew that she had addictions. Those of us in the family were sworn to secrecy. But now that she has passed, in order for my sister and I to heal from this family secret, we have decided to bring it into the open. The first addiction: mini grandma's cookies, vanilla cream. Yes, if not limited, she would eat these rather than instead of a meal. Mom, why aren't you eating very much for dinner? I'm just not hungry. I'm just not hungry, was her answer. Her second addiction was cough drops. Not just any old cough drops. It had to be wild honey. There it is, out in the open, except for her third addiction. Some of you might be familiar with. Her third addiction was prayer. She loved to pray for people. And I know that many of you out there were recipients of her prayers that she had for you. So do you remember the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Well, Mom's birth certificate, like I said, says she was born in Venus, Nebraska. 225.5 miles from Lincoln, Nebraska. How many of you have had the privilege of sharing with people that your mother was an alien from Venus? I had the privilege of doing that. My favorite memory growing up is in the kitchen. And my favorite memory is the stool in the kitchen. It was about this high. It had 2 or 3 steps to it. And when I came home from school, Mom would always be there in the kitchen. And I would sit in the chair while she busied herself with cleanup and preparation for baking an evening meal. The stool, for me, represented a safe place to share anything. It represented an oasis from all the negative stuff I encountered at school. Mom was a listener and an encourager. This was one of Mom's gifts. I saw it in many different ways. Probably most recently was in the retirement home where she lived for about 10 years. The workers would often tell me what a great influence Mom had on those around her. Mom loved her word find puzzles. I don't know if anybody does word find puzzles out there, but Mom loved to do those. She loved Rummy Cub. If you're on Facebook, you probably saw one of my posts that my frustrations with Mom was that she always won. She would let me win every once in a while, but most, even at 97, she beat me in Rummy Cup. I don't know how she did it, but she was good at it. It was fun watching her thrive at the retirement place. She even learned a new game called Sequence. Some of you might play Sequence also. She had so many friends, and she loved meeting the new people that moved into the place. Mom enjoyed walking. She told me one day that when us kids were young, she would choose to walk to town with us in a baby carriage to do her shopping rather than take the car. And to this day, I still walk. And Mom walked 4 miles a day up until 93, I think it was, and then she began to have heart problems and some other problems and had to slow down. But even when she lived with my sister at her house, she would walk around with her walker in circles around the room. When in high school, I was dating a girl that I knew Mom felt that she was not the one I should spend my life with. I dated her for 3 years while realizing that someday I would need to break up with her. I would not marry anyone that my mom did not approve of. She had a direct link to God, so, if I didn't do what she wanted, then I would have that guy up there that would even be worse than her. When I brought Carol home to meet Mom, my mom fell in love with her. After Carol had flown back to Canada, I asked Mom what she thought. She said, "She's the one." The next day, I phoned Carol and asked her to marry me. Very romantic, right? But I had to do it. It was time. My mom, of course, like I said, was a prayer warrior. She prayed for her kids and others every day. A week before she died, Mom shared with Sharon that she saw Dad in heaven. Hallucination or for real? I don't know. I'll never know. The one thing I do know is that a week before Elta Van Cleek died, Mom's mom, my grandma, she saw Jesus in heaven and would have nothing more to do with food or drink. Well, the same thing happened with Mom. Once she saw Dad in heaven, she had no more use for food or for water, and she refused it. In fact, when some of the people from the home we had taken her to tried to feed her, she just waved her arms, shut her mouth up, and she wouldn't open her mouth. I found some notes that Mom and Dad had wrote to each other back in 1982. Dad wrote on this one occasion, "Dear Isadora, I love you and appreciate all the extra time you put in the kitchen to prepare the special food I need. You even make it taste good. I miss you when we are not together. You are patient, kind, and unselfish. Love Lawrence." Here's my mom's note. "Thank you for the note. I really needed the lift that it gave me. I love you very much." They are together now. On Dad's headstone, it reads, "Until we meet again." On Mom's, we put, "Finally together again." When I think of Mom, I think two scriptures came to my mind. Hebrews 12:1, where it says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. And I don't know, I can't help but think of Mom as one of those witnesses now that stands with the other saints, the people of faith. And now that she's in heaven, she's one of those witnesses that are cheering all of us on. Because someday we'll each be able to, who knows, maybe Mom will greet you when you get to heaven. I already told God that, I got some of my mom's giftedness and encouragement. So I already told the Lord that when I get to heaven, I want to be one of his greeters to greet people into heaven. So maybe Mom and I will be there together. The other scripture is 2 Timothy 4, verses 7 and 8, where it says, I have fought the good fight. This is Paul, Apostle Paul speaking. I have finished the race, and I have remained faithful. And now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to his appearing. Mom fought the good fight. Mom finished the race. Mom remained faithful. Mom received the prize. Mom has the crown. And now she awaits to welcome you and I into heaven. I have the privilege at this time to have my grandson play a selection, It Is Well With My Soul, and my daughter-in-law, Anna, will accompany him.
For those who don't know me, I'm Michael. I called Isadora Grandma, although when my kids were born, that name was in high demand, so we took on the name that Kyle and Faith had for Grandma, which was Grammy. So we'll refer to her as Grammy probably up here for the rest of the time. So I asked my immediate family before coming up here what some of their memories were of Grammy. And so I'll read a few of those. So number one, playing bingo with Grammy at Creekside. None of us could keep up with Grammy or anyone else there with our bingo cards. But Grammy would help the kids keep up with their bingo cards while Becky and I just barely hung on with the rest of them. So my kids remember getting candy that the Grammy's friends would win. They would give them to them, thinking they didn't need the candy. And what I really remember, though, was how happy Grammy was at those times, just spending time with her family, and then really with her great grandkids. So number two, walks in the park. So many walks with Grammy. Anytime you went to go visit Grammy, there would be a walk. And my kids probably don't remember it, but Grammy was pretty hard to keep up with well into her 80s, when she finally started slowing down and walked at more of a most of our pace, finally. And then a few more Matchbox cars, marbles, Rummikub, and puzzles. I think if you know, you know. And number four, Christmas socks. Grammy always gave everyone socks for Christmas. And sometimes I sort of relied on getting socks at Christmas to make me through the rest of the next year. So, going back to memories when I was a kid, we had times where we would stay with Grammy and Grampy. My parents would have some stuff to go do, and they would drop us off. And it probably wasn't the same stool that my dad talked about, but I do remember the stool in the kitchen as well, and spending time there or helping wash dishes. Although Grammy probably thought I was in the way, but she never would say anything. She was always wonderful that way. I remember fried chicken. I loved Grammy's fried chicken. And she always let us eat Captain Crunch and honeycomb cereal, which was never to be found at our house. But mostly, I think I just remember that she just loved having her family around. This, God and family, those really are the two words I would say that sum up Grammy the best. So I have two more tributes to share. The first one is from my Aunt Sharon, Isadora's daughter, and who Grammy spent the last few years of her life with up near here, and we enjoyed visiting at their house over the last couple of years. So here we go. Mom, it is hard for me to realize you are gone. For 68 years, you have been there for me. And even though we didn't always see eye to eye on things, we had a lot of love between us. There are a lot of love things that I will always remember, like the many nights that you were up with me whenever I had bad nightmares. The Bible verses you always put in my school lunches. We have always liked playing games together, from playing cards together after dinner and dishes, to playing Monopoly, Scrabble, Rook with family, to playing bingo at the senior living home. And oh yeah, can't forget Rummikub, even though you usually won. That goes for all of us. Oh, and puzzles. We loved putting puzzles together. I am going to miss those fun times with you, Mom. I love you forever. Your favorite daughter, Sharon. And another tribute from one of the, I guess not kid anymore, but one of the kids at her church here in Auburn at the Free Methodist Church, Debbie Martin. I am so sorry to hear that she passed. My favorite memories of your mom come from her being my absolute favorite Sunday school teacher. She taught the 3rd grade girls class, and we loved her so much, we asked her to graduate with us and teach 4th grade, then 5th grade, and so on. This continued until we graduated into the youth department. She was the absolute best. Back in the day, we were taught to never call adults by their first name, so we always called her Mrs. Grass. To this day, she is still Mrs. Grass to me. She was an amazing woman of God who deeply influenced me as a young girl, and I will miss her. I'm looking forward to the day I will see her again inside heaven's gates. If she's teaching Heaven 101 class, I hope she's my teacher.
All right, can you hear me okay? I'm Paul Grass, Michael's brother, and one of the grandsons as well. I'll start with a couple tributes to read. So the first one is from the first one's from my mom. Hi, Mom. And you're gonna have to kind of pay attention while you listen to this because she's my grandma, but we called her Grammy, but my mom calls her Mom while she's writing about Mom. So you're just gonna have to realize this is my mom talking about her mom. So it says, when you get married, there can be this awkward time when you aren't sure what to call your parents-in-law. Do you call them by their first name? Do you call them Mr. or Mrs.? Or do you call them Mom and Dad? From the very beginning, Isadora was always just Mom to me. She accepted that on the very first day, and we bonded very quickly. Mom and Dad were such a gift to Jean and I. They were great role models. They were a great role model of a Christian couple that lived out biblical values, and they became the best grandparents to our kids that we could have ever asked for. They often took care of Paul, Peggy, and Michael for weeks at a time when Jean and I went on various pastor-related trips or vacations, and the kids never wanted to leave their grandparents. 2 years after Dad died, that's Lawrence, Mom moved to Beaverton to live independently near our home. She and I had a weekly date for shopping and a walk in the park across the street where she lived. On rainy days, we did puzzles and played Rummikub. You can see a theme here with the Rummikub. She was a blessing to me for the last 50 years. She will be missed dearly, and she carries on an incredible legacy. The second one, as many of you know, my grandma listened to memory verses for a very long time. One of those kids was the one that Michael read from Debbie. She read that as an adult. And when my dad was helping me kind of figure out what we were going to do for the tributes, he actually gave me some of these thank you letters from kids who she had listened to memory verses to a long time ago. This is just one packet. There's like 30 different kids who wrote thank you notes in here. There's probably 20 other packets just as large, which I have in my car. And I actually had this one on the front seat, and I was driving with my son Jacob, the guy who's playing the violin, and he tried to read the first one, and he said, "Dad, this is really hard to read. It's written in cursive." No, they don't teach cursive anymore in school. He did manage through most of the words. But this one was written on June 4th, 1993. Says, so this is at the time this person was a third grader. Dear Mrs. Grass, thank you for helping us with verses. You help me a lot with verses. You even help me when I can't say the bonus verse. I love learning the Word of God. You always compliment me when I am done. You are really fun to be with. You are really nice. Thank you. That was Katie Willis on June 4th, 1993. And so I thought I'd just, it's weird, I started wearing glasses. I only wear them to read, but I'm farsighted, so you guys all look kind of funny when I had them on. But I thought I'd kind of conclude with this. You know, it's tough to talk about my grandma without talking about my grandpa, because it's grandma and grandpa. You know, if you say it fast enough, it's like it's just, one word, right? Just grandma and grandpa. So the last time I was actually up here was actually at my grandpa's funeral I guess 12, 13 years ago now. And the main thing that's changed is I no longer have any hair, and I guess I have to use glasses to read. But I shared a couple stories about my grandpa, and one of the stories that I shared about my grandpa was about these $2 bills. If you were here, you may remember. But when I was a kid, I kept a really special box in my room, just a shoe box, and it had everything that was special to me from when I was a kid. Little notes that girls wrote you, or like things that you kept at camp or whatever. But these $2 bills were incredibly special because at Christmas, my grandma would always make stockings for us. And there was one item in there that was always from Grandpa. And it was these $2 bills. So I have 6 or 7 or 8 $2 bills that I've kept from my grandpa over the years. I think I might have been the only grandkid that got the $2 bills. I'm not sure if Michael or Kyle, if you guys got the $2 bills, but I think I was the only one that got the $2 bills. I was reminded of the $2 bills a couple months ago. I saw something online, and it was talking about how some $2 bills from back in the 80s, which is when I got them, are now worth like $20,000. So I went online, you can put in the serial number, and unfortunately, my $2 bills are still only worth $2. But after I gave that talk about the $2 bills from my grandpa here at this church, I was walking out, and someone came up to me and they said, Paul, you're right. Your grandpa did love giving you those $2 bills, but you don't really think he's the one that went out and got the $2 bills, do you? He said, it was your grandma. Your grandma went to the bank. She told the teller she wanted the crispest $2 bills. She paid for the $2 bills. She, brought them home. She put them in an envelope. She took the envelope. She set it right in front of your grandpa. All your grandpa had to do was write his name, and then she took the envelope and she put it in the stocking for you. And so I guess that's kind of how I'll always remember her. She never took credit for anything. She always put people before herself. She was a wife who made her husband his lunch for 50 years. I can still remember the lunch pail that it was in when I was a kid and watching her put his lunches together in the morning. Everything she did was selfless. It was for her family, for the Lord. And, to me, she's up in heaven now, and it's Grandma and Grandpa. So I think with that, we are starting the slideshow.
Just before I close in prayer, again, I want to, Sharon and I, thank you for coming today. There will be a reception in the reception hall down a couple halls. Just follow the crowd. And, so just a little story here first. So Esther, where's Esther at? Are you over there? There's Esther over there. Esther was having trouble with her hand that was hurting, and Mom told her how to solve it, and it took care of it. So ever since then, Esther's been making these things called scrubbies. Now, a lot of you are probably the recipients of these, but they're good for like carrots, or they're good for scrubbing pans, or whatever. They are fantastic. And Esther would send them to Mom, and she would hand them out at the retirement place, at church, everywhere she went. She had scrubbies to give away because Esther sending them. So when I clean out her place, I got a whole box full of scrubbies. So I have them in the reception area. So if you like a scrubby in memory of Mom, and grab one. They're really good, great. How many of you actually used them? Okay. Maybe you need a new one. Oh, my wife says you should take 2 or 3, or 4 or 5, or 6 or 7, whatever. So let's close in prayer. Thanks for coming. Father, thanks. Thanks for Mom. And I know she had given her life to you at an early age. And what a difference that has made in my life. Both Mom and Dad becoming Christians set the direction for my life. And I'll be forever thankful for that. And Father, I just pray that each of us here today will remember that our faith in you sets the foundation for everything that we do in life. It is a foundation that is solid. And as we draw close to you, Lord, you draw close to us. So thanks for drawing close to us during this time. Love you. Amen. So just down the hallway.